Hello and welcome to the Stand Out Get Noticed podcast. My name is Christina Canters and I'm your host. And today I'm super excited to be joined by Melanie Hayden from The Hayden Effect. Hi, Mel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Actually, we were just comparing our ISO nails, which are, are very naked nails. And we're both very upset about that. But what can you do? It is the current situation after all. And we've got to make the most of it, which we are actually talking about today. Now, Mel, you are a facilitator, a behavioral coach, and wait, I want to get this right, an organizational development consultant. Tell me in one sentence, what does that mean? What do you actually help people do?
I help people to be the best version of themselves. This
Love
is
it.
the easiest way of doing it, and it's always my interest has always been in a business context, on the human side of business.
Can you explain a bit more about that? What do you mean on the human side?
So, when we're talking about businesses, it's very important, obviously, that we have our processes and procedures and things, but it's also really important that you have happy, engaged employees who are being the best that they can be. So I work a lot with leaders and teams to facilitate that, to help create that in the culture, but also um, in the types of human resources initiatives and people and culture initiatives.
Mm. And Mel, we know each other quite well. We're both facilitators in the Compass program from Datna Grant, which is how we met. And I know that you are particularly interested in helping people to shift the way they think and to be more proactive and deliberate about the way they respond to situations, which is what we're talking about today. So, Mel, can you give a brief overview, firstly, around um, we have all these, like, tell me what you mean by what is a situation that might happen where where we then form a reaction.
Yeah. So it's exactly around that. We can't control what happens to us a lot of the time. So we will have a situation that has occurred. And a good example, it's all out there, is this COVID. We didn't choose this. How we respond, we have control over. And that's where I work with people to work out how you can actually control what your responses are so that you have a choice in choosing constructive behavior or behavior that is going to bring out your best and the best of people around you. And we do that by looking at what your thought processes are. So, what are your thoughts that are motivating your behavior and where have they come from? So a lot of the time, we have things happen to us and we go, okay, we'll deal with that later. And I have an analogy where I say, well, we put it in our bag. So something happens, we pop it in the bag. And then something else happens and just pop it in the bag. We block it and pocket. And then we get to a point where we are carrying around a bag that is so heavy and it also starts to split at the seams. And so things come out that we don't expect or we weren't planning on when a situation occurs. So a lot of the work that I do with people is to help empty the bag. It's a bit like, if you have something that you wear to, 1985, or, it's a beautiful dress, but it was good at the time and it made you feel good then and it was for that purpose, but it doesn't fit you anymore and it's not in fashion, although it might be again now. But why carry it around with you? Just, take it out, acknowledge it, and then leave it behind so that you have space to make those choices.
Wait, can we dive in more into this analogy of the bag that we carry around? Because I really love this. So what I'm hearing, Mel, is that we, instead of collecting, it's kind of like how we collect things and we
Yes.
hoard items and we hold on to them
Yeah.
and they clutter up our life. And so what are the things that we're collecting in this? Would you call it an emotional bag, a mind bag? Like what
It's
sort of
a it's a
bag is it?
thought bag,
A thought bag.
basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's what shapes our thoughts. And so we may have had something happen. Um, so we're, driving down the road and somebody swerves into our car and it causes us a lot of fear. And, maybe some damage some sort. Maybe that's just not go too serious, but it damages our car.
Yeah.
And so you're without your car and you're spending a lot of money and you got to walk and all the rest of it. And so that passes, and then the next time you're driving along, somebody just slightly swerves into you, and all of a sudden the thought comes back and you go, oh, I've seen this happen before. And you jump to assumptions, and then your thoughts and your feelings all shape around that, and that's what shapes your behavior. But if you don't catch yourself.
Hang on a second. So how is that a problem? If I'm what is the thought that I'm holding onto? Is it that all drivers are bad, or this always happens to me? Like, what are some of the thoughts that
so you might
having?
freak out completely and go into angry mode because you go, I'm not going down that path where I'm going to be without a car for 6 weeks and and all the rest of it. So, and even though this person's only just slightly, and it's not even going to be a situation, you react in, it's like a protection, all of these things that we carry around in our bag a lot of the time are to protect us, but they actually often hinder us more than they protect us if they are not of value. And that's a really important part as well, because we need to ensure that what we're carrying around in our bag in terms of our thoughts are in line with our values, with the way we want to see ourselves as our best version of ourselves.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that we go through life and we collect these thoughts about ourselves, about other people. I guess I'm thinking of an example of, let's say, someone in the workplace who is delivering a presentation and maybe they don't do a very good job. One thought they might have about that is, oh, my boss thinks I'm stupid, or I always freeze up. I'm not good at public speaking. Is that an example of a thought that might be kept in your bag and carried around with you?
Definitely. And I think that, we talk about a fight, flight, or freeze response. That's a really good example. So somebody who goes up and makes a presentation and, is conscious and a little bit nervous about it, if somebody asks them a question that they think is having a go at them,
right,
or, well, what do you mean by that? And they go, oh, so that person's either, if they're going to come from a defensive point and they're not choosing the most constructive behaviour, the fight person will go, oh, well, weren't you listening? What do you mean? Well, why would you ask a question like that? So that's that sort of aggressive. Whereas somebody who flight might all of a sudden want to withdraw from the situation and shut down. And somebody who freezes might just not be able to say anything. So it's our thoughts, and when it comes down to it, we don't know what this person is thinking about us. We can only control our own thoughts. So being conscious of that is the greatest gift that you can give yourself, because then you choose how you respond.
Right. Okay. And I do want to dive into that a little bit later. I know you're probably sick of me coming back to the bag analogy.
No, I love the bag analogy.
Okay. All right, cool. So we've got this bag that we carry around with us, and it's collecting all of these thoughts based on the experiences that we've had. And these thoughts may or may not serve us, but we're carrying them around anyway. What do most people do with this bag?
Ignore it.
Okay.
Or a lot of the time not acknowledge that it's there. And the more that happens to you, the more energy it takes to carry around with you. It's exhausting.
Can you explain that? What do you mean by that?
So it's like, let me use another analogy, but along the same lines. What's her name? Marie Kondo?
Yes.
Yeah.
The decluttering lady.
We're decluttering. So like a house where you collect things, and it might have meant something to you at the time, so you keep it, and you don't want to get rid of it because you're not sure what it would mean if you let it go, or what will you do with that space. So it's the same type of principle, but just from a behavioural perspective. We're checking out what you've got and what it means to you, and does it benefit your behaviour or does it cost you in some way? And a lot of the time people, if you're not spending time cleaning out your bag, this is an ongoing thing as well. You don't clean it out and then it's done, you never have to look at it again. So we need to stop and think, okay, what's going on with me at the moment? Why am I reacting the way that I am? Where are these thoughts coming from? Is this something that is a behavior that I've carried, or an automatic behavior? And do I still want to have it? How does it
Mm.
align to how I want to see myself? Or how does it align to how I influence other people? Is it in a positive way, or is it in a negative way?
So how do we know if this carrying this bag around with us is a problem? When does it become a problem?
Different people, different ways, obviously. A lot of the time it's through how we're coping with stress.
Okay.
So our stress tolerance. It's through impact on other people, whether that's through leadership or interpersonal relationships. It's on how effective we are in achieving our goals that we set for ourselves. And it's all around how we're spending our time and energy. We all get, we get given this much time and energy. It's not about finding more time or more energy. What are you spending your time and energy on? And if you find that you're spending time and energy in an area and it's not benefiting you, so for example, it's causing you massive amounts of stress, and you don't like how you are responding to
Right.
situations or people, uh, or sometimes it's when people get feedback around that, unexpected feedback, um, whether it's a breakup of a relationship, whether it's feedback from a manager or feedback from a client. It's that, oh, hang on a minute, what's happening here? And this seems to be something that is happening in a pattern for me.
Right. So it sounds like when things aren't quite working out for you in the way you'd like them to,
Mhm.
or maybe you're spending, I mean, I know a lot of people in the workplace spend too long stressing or, feeling anxious or over preparing for a meeting or a
Yeah,
presentation or a conversation they need to have with a colleague.
yeah,
And that, so to me, from Mel, from what you're saying, it sounds like that if you notice yourself spending too much time preparing or you're spending a lot of time stressing over something that's coming up, maybe that's an indication that your bag is getting full and you
can
need
be.
to take a look at it and
Yeah,
declutter Marie Kondo style.
yeah. It's just, doing a bit of a spring clean. How can you do things more effectively? How will that impact your well-being? It's all to do with well-being. So um, it's always good to pick something up and, either clean it up. If it's something that's great, then dust it off and clean it up and raise it to the surface, or pop it away.
You
You
know,
know,
one of the techniques that Marie Kondo talks about, and I recommend. She's a bit of a nut, like she's a bit eccentric, but her book is great, and I'm going to link it up in the show notes. But something that she says to do is go. Let's say you're going through your clothes and decluttering. You pick up an item of clothing and you ask yourself, "Does this spark joy?
give me
You
joy.
know,
Yeah,
does this spark joy?" And if it's a yes, and she talks about how you feel it in your heart. You go, I intuitively know, yes, I love this skirt. I love it. You keep it. But if you're like, oh, well, I got it really cheap, or oh, but I've had it for, it's sentimental value. If you're a bit, then you get rid of it because it's not sparking joy. It's not serving you. And to me, it sounds like we can do a similar thing with our thoughts,
yes.
Mel. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think definitely we can look at our response to a situation and say, am I am I proud of how I responded in that
Mm,
situation? Um, was it constructive? Did it take a lot from me in terms of, time and energy and stress, or was I able to move through effectively? So, and all the other thing with behaviours is they can spark joy, but we also hold on to behaviours where we go, no, 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 I need that just in case this happens.
can you give an
Or
example?
so interpersonal relationships is a really good example. So if you have been disrespected in a relationship in the past because you weren't aware of something, then you might become a little bit more cynical, or you might become a little untrusting in the next relationship, completely different person, but in the next relationship, because you think, oh no, I'm not going to let that happen again.
Right.
And so therefore that's something that blocks you rather than creates space for your best person to be. Does that make sense?
It does. It sounds like it would be difficult to let go of that because in some
Very.
way it is protecting you, right?
Yes, very much so. And like when we facilitate, through Compass, we talk about going through the dragon's belly or the belly of the dragon. So if you have a perceived self and then something occurs that highlights your actual self and there's a bit of a gap, then in order to get back up to that wanted self or perceived self, you need to go through the belly of the dragon. And that will be uncomfortable. There's a lot of uncertainty there. But if you don't go through that, then you just, rationalizing or justifying, and you go backwards. So yes, and it depends on how deep it is.
Mm.
It's like when you see those decluttering, non-hoarding shows. Some people hold on to something and they would just fall apart crying about it because they've put so much of themselves,
Right.
their thoughts into it. So yes, it depends on how long we've held that thought, how long, what it served us in the past. Have we actually processed that?
Yeah.
And what does it mean for us if we let it go?
I can think of an example where, someone might always be having a lot of drama in their relationships, and this could be and they get a lot of love and connection from their friends and family because they're the drama queen, for example, because it's all this drama's happening in my life and I need to vent and I need to get this out. And then the family and the friends go, oh, you poor thing, okay, let's help you through this. And so they identify as being the drama queen who gets the love and support and connection through having all this drama in your life. So having that identity is such a strongly held identity that it's like, well, if you stopped having drama, you would have this fear of, well, is people not going to love me anymore? How am I going to get attention? How am I going to connect with people if I don't have any drama to share? So it sounds like that, that would be a very difficult identity to, like, you'd really have to get into the belly of the dragon, like you said, Mel, and get really uncomfortable and face that and go, oh, I don't know what's going to happen if I let this identity go. But it's important to then get to the next level.
And there's absolutely, and there's lots and lots of process around this, but one that's really important to acknowledge is we need to be aware of it first. So there's a lot of people have things happen, or they have automatic behavior that they will do but they're not really aware of it. So awareness is the first step. Acceptance is the tough one, and then action. So you can't act, you can buy a book, a go course, all the rest of it. But if you're not aware of what personally impacts your thoughts and behaviors, and you haven't accepted it. So this is where the uncomfortable bit sometimes comes in, because we go, okay, well, how does that work for you? What happens around you and what happens to you when you respond in that way? What does it feed? And and where does that come from? And it's not a matter of lying down on the couch for 6 months or anything. Focus forward. It's that solution focus. We want people to keep moving forward, but that acceptance point, actions moving forward, that acceptance point is just, let's stop and have a look at it. And do you want to keep it? Do you want to change it in some way? Or do you want to let it go?
Would you mind sharing an example, Mel, of maybe a time where you became aware of a reaction or a thought that you were having?
Me,
Yeah.
I have these things all the time because I have to practice what I preach, obviously. So I can give you one from this morning.
Yeah, sure.
I am in Melbourne, so I am in lockdown. I also have had a broken foot for 3.5 months. So I've been in stage 4 basically for a long time. And I'm homeschooling my 6-year-old, almost 7-year-old in grade 1. Great idea to send her to the local primary school, but which is a bilingual school. And so that was fabulous until I have to become her teacher and everything is in French. So, and when I was at school, one of the worst things, I just hated these things was, if the train leaves station and it's traveling for 2 hours, what time is it going to get? But this is what we had to deal with this morning, but all written in French. But I'm going to say it in English because my French is not great. So it's things like, today I'm going to leave for Adelaide. It's 6 o'clock in the morning now. I'm going to leave at 6 o'clock. It's going to take 7.5 hours to get there. What time will I get there? And so Tessa, my daughter, is, working through, and I can feel, I often say to people, acknowledge the physical feelings that you have, because that's your first clue. So for me, it's, a bit of this starts happening. And I'm
like
annoyed.
Tightness in your shoulders?
Yeah, tightness in my shoulders. And in the back of my mind, now that, I'm thinking about it, in the back of my mind, I know where this is coming from because I hated these types of questions and they made me really angry and feel frustrated that I couldn't just click them like some people do. And she was taking so long to get to it. And she's dancing, she's, I don't know, maybe. And I'm like, okay, and this is my automatic reaction was, can you just concentrate? If you used all the energy that you're using to dance around and move and to actually concentrate, you might be able to do this. And because I don't want her to be as frustrated as what I was when I used to do that. But that's not the most constructive way that I could have responded. And fortunately, I can catch myself and I try and practice what I preach. Stop. Love this analogy. Stop. Stop. S for stop. Take a breath. Observe what's happening. Openly observe what's happening. So I thought, no, this is to do with me. This is not to do with her. And then proceed with choice and in line with your values.
So that's STOP. So it's actually the acronym STOP, and each one has a different step. Can you repeat those for me?
So stop. So stop, which is often the hardest bit. When you feel, something happening, stop. Take a breath, full deep breath. Observe what is going on. So what is actually happening here?
So what did you observe?
I observed that the frustration was coming from me. And I did relate it back to, I hated these types of questions when I was younger. So, all of that was bubbling down. And I mean, she's 6. She's just sort of, doing this kind of thing. But that was enough. That was just, I was almost like it was a little opening for my bag to spill and onto her. And that wasn't the most constructive way of, trying to bring her back. And I'm a teacher, but not of 6-year-olds. God.
And definitely not in French.
And not in French.
So tell me, so going back to the 3 steps that you talked about before, which was to observe and then accept.
Aware. So
be aware.
3 A's, okay. Yeah. So awareness.
Yep.
Acceptance.
So tell me about what you did in that moment to accept.
Well, I accepted that it was coming from me and it was not something that was coming from her. I don't think I've processed it because even when I'm talking about it, I'm still angry that I couldn't do those kind of, questions when I was younger. But I accepted it to the level that I could change my action or change my response to it. And it is very much a deep breathing. Unfortunately, my beautiful Tessa, because I, speak to her about all these things as well. And she will actually say to me when she sees me getting a bit tense, she goes, Mum, stop, take a breath. And sometimes I feel like saying, it's like when I'm trying to get her out the door or something, and I haven't got time to talk about you. That's what I'm thinking, but I have to do it. She goes, no, deeper, Mum, deeper. And it actually does work.
That is adorable.
I know. She goes, okay, now we're right. I was like, oh my God, you're only 6. What are you going to be like when you're a teenager? But anyway.
Sounds like you've taught her well, Mel.
Well, I love you too well at this point. So
So the third A, which was the action. So
Yes.
what was the action you were then able to take
So the
after you
action
accepted?
was afterwards, I actually said sorry. I said, no, let's do that in a different way. And it's about a level of tolerance and, acknowledging my frustration in a situation. I said, okay, let's do it in a different way. So then I drew a line which had 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., all the way through. And then we counted, and then I'm putting a sun for a.m. and a night for p.m. And I said, so if we leave at 6 a.m. and it's going to take us 8 hours or 8.5 hours, whatever, let's count. Let's do it that way. So, yeah,
And did you do
I
that in
didn't.
French?
I knew you were going to ask that. No, I did not do that in French.
That would have been really impressive.
Well, when she has to write it in French on her Seesaw application. So, but no, we actually did that bit in English.
Right.
Trying to teach the time in English is hard enough. Trying to teach it in French is when you don't speak fluent. It's tricky.
Yeah. Well, Mel, thanks for sharing that example. I think it's a really beautiful way of illustrating the concepts that we're talking about here. And tell me, Mel, as a result of that, because we're talking about, okay, it's important that you're aware, that you observe, and that you are aware and accept, and then change your actions. What result does that then get for us? How does that then affect ourselves and then the people around us?
Well, it gives us the ability to know that we have a choice. We
Right.
don't have to go with what we've always done or what our automatic reaction is. And it's going to happen all the time. It's not striving to be perfect. It's being human and giving ourselves the opportunity to go, hang on a minute, I'm going to do that in a different way. That wasn't the best
Yeah.
way that I could do it.
Yeah.
That wasn't the most constructive way for me to do it. So it's all around that feeling of choice. And when we feel we have choice, then it brings us much more calmness. It
Yeah.
also brings clarity into the situation. And that's so important for our well-being and the well-being of people around us and how we
Mm.
connect with people as well.
Mm. It is so powerful when you do realize that, oh, I can choose
Of course.
to react in a certain way. I don't have to do the thing I've always done. And, so I think for those who are listening, if you ever notice yourself saying things like, oh, I always get so angry when this happens, it's like, well, you don't have to,
That's right.
challenge that and go, do I have to get angry when this happens? Do I have to get really stressed and anxious every time my boss asks me, to speak in a meeting? Is like, do I have to do that? Maybe not, get curious.
And that's exactly right. It's that difference between having that fixed mindset. Oh, well, that's me. I always do it like that. Oh, well, you can't change that now.
Mm,
No, you can.
mm,
And by going into it with more of a growth mindset, we go, okay, that was really interesting that I responded in that way, or I'm really curious to think about why I'd always do that. And that allows you to open up the awareness and then the acceptance and then the action. So, we won't go, it's a whole other topic to go around neuroplasticity, but it's our mind is something, it's a muscle, wherever we direct our attention and our focus and our intention towards consistently is where we will get strong.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's quite simple in that regard. It's not simple to do, but it's simple to look at where we want to practice our behavior and our thoughts.
So would you say that's the first step, Mel? So for someone who's listening to this and thinking, okay, I want to work on this more, what would you say would be the first place they can start?
Well, the first thing I always say is, why do you want to? How will it benefit you? How do you feel the way that you're responding to situations? How is it blocking you, or what's it costing you? And it is, there are enormous amounts of books in the world and online courses and all that sort of thing, but I think it's really important to have an individualized, I'm going to say the word assessment, understand yourself.
Yeah.
Don't just put yourself in a box like a Myers-Briggs, oh, I'm an INTJ, or, actually understand yourself, because that's going to raise the awareness. And then the acceptance is usually something that it's really good to have somebody else work with you.
Okay.
So, um, if you have access to somebody who can challenge you on certain things without your defenses coming up, and that's where sometimes it can be tricky with friends, because you have emotional ties and things with relationships with friends. But if it's an objective person and you know that they're only doing this to help you, you can say, well, hang on a minute, Christina, why you acted quite defensively when we were looking at this? Why do you think that is? Where's that come from? How has that served you in the past? And it's sorting. This is why I say to people, it's like sorting out a jigsaw puzzle, looking at the pieces, how do they all fit together? Does it fit? Is it part of this jigsaw? No? Okay, fine. It was one part of a jigsaw that we used to use. So working with someone is very beneficial,
Yeah.
but it also has to be self-directed. You have to want this.
Oh,
Don't do it.
absolutely.
Don't do it because we think we should. You truly have to want it, and there's a bit of work involved.
Definitely.
Constantly.
Oh, and Mel, I know like we've both done a lot of work on ourselves and we've had our
Yeah.
own coaches and I
Mhm.
mean, this is why we coach people,
Yes.
this is what we help people to do, to challenge them and to get them thinking more deeply about themselves and
Yeah.
developing a deeper understanding of themselves. So I absolutely agree with you there around, it can be very difficult, especially if you've never done it before,
Mm.
to work through this yourself.
Mm.
And family and friends who have not been trained as coaches or who have too much of a close emotional tie to you,
Mm.
it's also cannot be as helpful. So I think, you know, definitely exploring, the prospect of working with a coach. And of course, a coach is a very personal choice.
Yeah.
Every coach is different, so it's about
Yeah.
finding the one that's right for you. But
Definitely.
it's absolutely beneficial when you do find the right coach. They
Mm.
can really help you to transform the way you think, and as a result transform the outcomes that you're getting.
And see the benefit of being vulnerable.
Mm,
Brene Brown's got um, a YouTube, it's a TED Talk, which I think is up to about 65 million or something of people who've looked at it. If you haven't had a look at it, then I definitely suggest that, because it is around what is the benefit of us being vulnerable. Being vulnerable to ourselves is the first step, and then also letting other people see that basically it's not vulnerability gets a bad rap, and it's seen as weakness. Some things, especially when we're going COVID and people are vulnerable, means that they are weak and easily could get sick or something. But being vulnerable is about being human. So, share it.
yeah,
That's,
love it.
that's why I tell you I didn't do well this morning. But I'm human.
Absolutely.
That's what happens.
Well, Mel, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Christina. Lovely to speak with you.
Can you share with us how people can get in touch with you?
And I don't have a website. That's one of my things. Yes, look, you can get in touch with me through Melanie at thehaydeneffect.com. Also, LinkedIn is probably one of the best ways. So, and Hayden is spelt with a D-O-N. Just
And
something different.
and remind us of the people that you work with.
So I work with mostly executives. I do work with executives and leaders, and I work with organisations that are wanting to shape their people and culture to be more in line with their company values. So I also do work with individuals, but most of the time the work that I do is centred around business.
Yeah. Awesome.
through,
Well,
through
thanks again,
businesses.
Mel. This is super fun.
Okay, thanks so much.